Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Benga Gunjini. I am the director of the Nigerian Center, and it's my great honor to host this event today to talk about understanding how to engage with the U.S. Congress. So for those who are joining us for the very first time, I'm going to give a little bit introduction about the work of the Nigerian Center. And talk about opportunities to get involved in what we do. For today's event, we have three dynamic speakers. We have Diana from African Communities Together, is the policy director. We also have the honor of our U.S. representative in Washington, D.C., to also speak to us today. And we are going to be hearing briefly from April, our immigration attorney at the Nigerian Center, to talk about legal resources that we have. The reason why this particular topic is important, I would say are threefold. Number one, oftentimes as immigrants, when we come to a new country like the United States, would often come for family, professional, business purposes. And as a default or as a consequence, we experience political apathy. We don't necessarily make engaging with policy and executive leaders a priority for us because, quite frankly, that is not what a lot of people come here. But the reality is, even to accomplish those professional and family goals, and even for our family to fully live out their life potential and possibilities and opportunities that this country offers, we have to be civically engaged. And that is why this is very important. Another reason why this is important is responsibility, understanding that as immigrants to this new country, this United States of America, whatever opportunities or privileges we currently have or have access to enjoy, some people work tirelessly for that to happen. They are not all elected representatives. They are private citizens like everyone else on this call, but they committed their life's work. Some even gave their lives for us to experience these opportunities we have today. And that is why, as we now become Americans and we have first and second and subsequent generations of Americans, and even for those who will come, we all have the responsibility to make sure that life is a little bit better for them. And that's one of the core tenets and values of this great country that I really, really love. And that is why this meeting is very, very important. Lastly, when we look at our communities, just the African immigrant community as a whole, we have the numbers when it comes to representation, when it comes to getting our voices heard. We in Washington, D.C., the Nigerian Center, I heard the other time, like our neighbor in Maryland, PG County, African immigrants constitute their own 40% of all the businesses in that district. Employing labor, creating to the economy of those communities, but we don't have representation, and we don't even when we don't even engage And that is the reason why, again, this program is very, very important. Lastly, I want to talk about the efforts of the Nigerian Center for TPS. Again, we have the numbers. Democracy is a numbers game, is a numbers experience. So when we advocate for policies that would have systemic impact on our community as a whole, it really does not serve us if we don't collectively make our voice heard and have a sense of cohesion. So we may have all the numbers, but if we are not as a single cohesive unit, we can make the most of that. So we thought this is very, very important to really engage practitioners to speak to us about how do we engage with elected representatives, both at the local level and the federal level, but we are going to be concentrating on federal at this point. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about Nigerian Center's work. We have a short video I'm going to play to talk about the work that we do at Nigerian Center.
My name is Benga Agunji, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Nigerian Center. The Nigerian Center is the very first Nigerian American immigrant and community center. While we are called the Nigerian Center, we serve all minority and all immigrant groups in the United States. In many immigrant communities across the country and around the world, whether they're Chinese or Jewish or Latinos or even Ethiopians, there is an actual location members of those communities can walk into to support the American dream and American experience. While the Nigerian community individually has prospered, we now have an opportunity as a community to have our own Nigerian Center.
I am most excited to be a part of the Nigerian Center because we are a resource hub. And we know that while a lot of Nigerians we may know come into the country and they have a connection here or there is a huge population that don't have access. I can speak to thinking about maybe 30, 40 years ago when my parents came to the country. And while my dad came to the country through education, my mom came through a lottery. And when she got here, she had to go do things the regular way. You know, she came in New York, hustled, worked at McDonald's for like 2 weeks. And from McDonald's, she started getting, you know, other menial jobs before she was able to meet my dad. They got married, they had children. My mom didn't go back to school. Until she was like 40 to finally start her career. And I know that if there was something like the Nigerian Center, she could have been afforded opportunities, access information on how to go to school or how to start her own business if that's what she wanted to venture into.
I remember my uncle, I think I was like 10. He got deported. I haven't seen him in years because he can't come back in this country. If he had had the resources that the Nigerian Center offered, maybe it would be a different story.
As a pastor, and I can speak confidently for the church community, a lot of pastors struggle with the kinds of immigration challenges that their members are having. And sometimes when we pastors meet, we joke about the fact that there's this thing that is, you know, the don't ask, don't tell kind of thing, a principle that most Nigerians are engaging in. They don't tell you what they are going through. Some of them are dying in silence. By the time they speak up, sometimes it's too late. And I know that as a pastor, you know, I could have, Nigerian Center will have come handy in helping people to know what is right, having the kind of the right information, speak to the right attorney, have right representation in court, and just to make the journey easier and smoother in the United States.
People come here from different paths and for the same main reason, just to get a better life, a better situation for their family. So there are numerous ways, numerous paths to the United States and to citizenship. So we help people with family-based immigration, employment-based immigration, asylum, refugee cases, student visas, pretty much everything that the law allows us to assist people with the process of immigration.
You know, just having this center here, you know, it's just people identified that looks just like us, where we can get the resource from. I mean, this is something that even me as a grown-up young person just wanted to come. I wanted to know that it belongs here. I'm just happy that this is here. I wish that my mom and dad, you know, they were still alive to like witness this experience.
From the time my parents came from Kenya, they immigrated to New Jersey, and that's where they actually met. It took years for my mom to find employment. My dad has stayed at the same job for 25 plus years in fear of not being able to find other employment. Not even that, being able to purchase a home, it took them 25 years to buy their dream home. Having the healthcare aspect and having health insurance for my siblings and I. Nigerian Center is providing a service from all crosses across the board for immigrants.
And Nigerian Center provides opportunities with immigration and naturalization, provide home ownership opportunities, access to capital, language classes, and cultural programs.
Learning about the Nigerian Center was a godsend. You know, growing up, I used to think about how we can share our experiences and our culture. And oftentimes, Nigerian people are so interested in giving back, but there are few opportunities and motives to do so. So when I heard about the Nigerian Center, it just clicked. Talking about home ownership, we're talking about financial literacy, we're talking about immigration services, not only for people from our background, diaspora, but for everybody else as well who can gain from it. I see the Nigerian Center not only as an opportunity to celebrate our culture, but to also share it as well.
I welcome you to be a part of the journey and to be a part of the experience. Welcome to the Nigerian Center.
Okay, so let's get right into it. I want to highlight two upcoming events that you should check out. October 25th of this month, we're having a virtual Know Your Rights workshop, which is preparing evidence to support your asylum claim. It's going to be via Zoom. You can register for this event. This is very, very important. Also, while we don't have a TPS designation at this time, individually, folks can still apply for asylum application. And if you need support with that process, this event is going to be very, very helpful for you. As part of the Nigerian Independence Celebration, we are partnering with a local nonprofit in DC called Kama DC, and we have a storytelling night at October 10th. It's an in-person event. It will be immigrant storytelling, and the theme is going to be independence and individuality. Please join. If you're in the DC area, you can go to the website to register for that event. Opportunities to get involved. This video will be on our website, and the previous recording of all our workshops, you can have access to them on our media page. Volunteer opportunities. We are about to open up applications for our language classes. So if you are a speaker of Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa languages, please reach out to us. And if you also want to volunteer at our immigration clinic, our life events, helping up with fundraising, please reach out to us as well. Community partners, if you are an organization that works with immigrant groups and we think you can get your community to us, our resources to your community, please sign up on our community partners page. If you're not following us on social media, please do so today. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Speaking opportunities, if you're a subject matter expert, an historian, an author, if you have any content that can benefit the community, please reach out to us for speaking opportunities. There's a very short form you can complete online. If you are not already donating to the Nigerian Center, we invite you to do so. The best form of support you can give to the Nigerian Center is a recurring donation. As a volunteer-led team, it makes a ton of difference if we can plan on a specific income coming from our community. And please don't wait till you have $1,000 or $1 million. You can literally start supporting us today with $5, with $1, with $10. It goes a long, long way to do so. And you can do so at Nigerian Center/donate. We are tax deductible 501c3. Your donations will be tax deductible, so it's a benefit. Please support us. Your donation will make a great impact. Okay, that said, I want to bring our speakers on. The very first speaker I'm going to bring on is Dr. Owolewa, U.S. Representative of Washington, D.C. He needs no introduction. Dr. Oye, please come to the microphone. We'll be honored to hear from you briefly.
Thank you, Brother Benga, and good afternoon to everybody. It's good to be here with the Nigerian Center once again, albeit virtual, but seeing you all here is a highlight of my day already. For those who don't know, I am Dr. Owolewa, U.S. Representative of Washington, D.C., and the first Nigerian American ever elected U.S. representative. And my foray into politics started in 2004 when I was just 14 years old, watching the presidential debates with my mom and dad, and seeing nobody that come from where I come from, especially not come from where my parents come from. So growing up, I never thought that we could become elected officials in America or have an impact until I necessarily wouldn't be the last. And we got other Nigerian Americans or other diasporans not only to run for office, but win it as well. And now that we're in our second term, I really focus on representation, not just being about where somebody's last name is, but also the benefits one's community gets when they elect someone in office, whether they live in my District of Columbia or beyond. And that comes down to knowing the resources. That's coming down to knowing the policies. That's come down to knowing the right thought leaders to put you in position to win. That's why I want to thank folks like Benga Nigerian Center or Diane or even Manitri from ERN for providing opportunities for people to step up and create their own visions of success. Now, when it comes to business, Black people and minorities make up 25% of all small businesses in this country, but they only get 1.7% of federal contracts. Those are opportunities for us to scale up our businesses, hire the folks from the community, do things that we already do, but utilize the government as a partner to get us where we want to go. But all that happens when we know the process. So I want to thank you, Benga, and everybody involved in this today, because that's how our community, whether you're from Nigeria, whether you're from Africa, whether you're just Black and your family's been in this country for generations, it's our opportunity to win. And we can't win if we don't know the players. We can't win if we don't know the processes, and we can't win if we don't come together and make things happen. So my office, we hold events. Our next one's on the 11th, where we're going to be teaching about how to get contracts, but most importantly, lock into organizations like African Communities Together, Nigerian Center, because they put us first and they don't leave us behind when it comes to information, whether it's language opportunities, whether it's immigration services, whether it's home buying. We're not just a one-trick pony. We make sure that regardless of where you're from, we can have an impact on your life and livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oye. A virtual applause is going on for you right now. You can hear it, but trust, we are cheering you on. Thank you so much for all that you do. So let me bring on April to also come online, talk a little briefly about the work of the center, and just give an overview with immigration resources that may be available for our community.
Perfect. The Nigerian Center offers a unique and wonderful service every Thursday, doing a walk-in immigration clinic from 12:30 to 4:30. This clinic is not only guiding people towards what immigration options they have available, but also reviewing documents, helping people prepare for interviews, whether that's asylum or citizenship or spousal visa interviews, and also providing referrals for any other legal services that people might need outside of immigration. On our website now, you can find the TPS for Nigeria campaign, which also has a comprehensive list of documents that people can use to support their asylum applications as well. So if you know anyone who's in need of any immigration services, please send them our way to come into a clinic on Thursday, or if they're not able to, we can set up Zoom sessions with them outside of that Thursday, but just send them our way so we can help them. Thank you all for being here today.
Excellent. Diana, are you ready for greatness?
Sure.
Excellent. Are you able to share your screen at your hand?
I am, yes. Let me do that now. Okay. Sure. All right, I think you can all see my screen now.
Yes.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you to the Nigeria Center for having me here today. Having our community be civically engaged is very important. So I'm glad to be able to participate in this event. And thank you for all of you all for joining and taking some time out on your Saturday to listen about Congress. As we see, our Congress right now is a bit dysfunctional. And we're keeping our fingers crossed that they can work things out so that the government does not shut down in a couple of hours. But while they figure it out, we are going to learn a little bit about what Congress is and how we as a community get things done. So as Benga mentioned, my name is Diana Konate. I am the policy director at African Communities Together. Let me move one slide. So I have been leading ACT's federal advocacy work for the past 4 years. Prior to that, I was a staffer on the Hill and worked for a member of Congress for a number of years. A little bit about my organization, African Communities Together. We are a membership-based organization of African immigrants who are fighting for civil rights, opportunity, and a better life for our families. So part of the work that we do involves advocacy at the state, local, and federal level. And I primarily focus on our federal advocacy, which is where we prioritize immigration policy. So today's presentation is intended to be very high level because there's actually a lot of complexity involved in Congress and how it works, but we want to make, or I'd like to make this presentation very approachable to give folks a good solid foundation of what Congress is, its purpose, how it's structured, as well as a broad overview about how an idea can turn into a piece of legislation. The presentation will also be interactive so that you can leave knowing how to find information, as well as how to help your friends and family also find information. Here is a quick roadmap of what the presentation will be. It'll be divided into 2 sections. The first section will focus on Congress itself, and the second section will go through the legislative process. I'll try to keep each section about 30 minutes long to give some time at the end for questions that folks might have. So hopefully we can get through everything and you know, and still have time for questions. So first, Congress. Congress was created by the Constitution. It is one of our 3 branches of government, 3 co-equal branches of government, and its role is to make laws. So, you know, we have 3 branches of government. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The legislative branch is where Congress falls. Its role is to make our laws. The executive branch, that's the president and our agencies, their role is to execute our laws. And then the third branch, the judicial branch, is where our courts are, and their role is to interpret the laws. So that's, generally how our government is set up. Each branch is supposed to provide checks and balances to the other branches. In a perfect world, that's how it's supposed to work. Congress itself is made up of two chambers, a Senate, which is the upper chamber, and a House of Representatives, which is the lower chamber. The House of Representatives has 435 representatives spread out across our 50 states. The number of representatives that a state gets is based on that state's population. So as the state's population grows, the state will get more House representation in the House of Representatives. As if the population shrinks, if people move out of the state, then they lose representatives. Each member of each congressman, congresswoman has a 2-year term. So everybody in the House is up for re-election every 2 years. So the next election is next year, November 2024. And at that time, every single member of the House will be up for election. And we have already gotten to our first exercise of the day. So for this exercise, I thought it would be useful to have people find their representative and figure out how to contact them, and also figure out what kinds of things that your representative can help you with. So if you, for those of you who are in front of your computer, and even if you're on your phone, if you can open up a browser and a browser on the side, and go to www.house.gov, and I will do that as well. Are you seeing my the new screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so when you come to the House screen, you will see in the corner where it says find your representative in the right-hand corner. And in order to find your representative, you put in your zip code. And so I am going to put in my zip code. I recently moved back to DC. So I'm going to put in my zip code and then click look up. You all should be doing the same to find your own representative. Okay, and here is my representative, Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton. I click on her name and it'll bring me to her website. If if this was my first time coming to her website, I might, want to learn a little bit about her. So come click her biography. She has been representing DC for a very, very long time. And I can learn about her committees, what she is responsible for in the House of Representatives. Now because Nigeria Center is in DC, you all might already know this information, but just as an FYI, Congresswoman Holmes Norton is a delegate to the House of Representatives. She does not have a vote on in the House because she is because DC is not a state. So technically, she, you know, we know DC has no representation, unfortunately. And but we're fighting hard to make DC a state so that we are represented. But that's just a quick tangent. To contact the Congresswoman, you would go to contact. You can request a meeting. You can see where her office is located. But I put this here because a lot of the times, you know, we advocates who are working on, you know, various campaigns will ask our community members to reach out to their members of Congress and take some type of action. So for example, Nigeria Center could reach out and say, you know, contact your member of Congress and ask them to support TPS. So this is how you would come to their website, find their information and, you know, contact them and ask them to take some type of action on behalf of whatever campaign you're working on. So this is the House of Representatives. Let me get us back. Okay, so that's the House. Now the Senate, the upper chamber, is has 100 senators. Each state, unlike the House of Representatives, each state has 2 senators. So regardless of population, every state has the same representation in the Senate. There are some pros and cons. Some people like that, some people don't. If you are from a very populous state, you might want more representation and feel like that's fair. But you know, this is the system that we have. Each senator is elected for a term of 6 years, and every 2 years, one third of the senators are up for re-election. So unlike the House where everybody's up for re-election at the same time, every 2 years, in the Senate, it's only 1/3 of the Senate that's up for re-election. And the idea with that is that the framers wanted there to be continuity in the Senate. They wanted, you know, the body was created to be slow and deliberative, and they didn't want everything changing up very quickly, like in the House. So that's the reasoning behind that. And you'll have senators who have been, you know, in the Senate for very, very long time, also in the House, but that's the Senate. And we will now figure out how to find our senators. In the House, everybody only has 1 representative. In the Senate, everybody has 2 representatives. So total, each of us have 3 people in Congress who represent us. And we'll find who our senators are. So to do that, you go to www.senate.gov. And I will do that and walk you through. To find the senators on this website, it's on the left-hand side. You click Find Senators, and then you find your state. As I mentioned, DC is not a state, so I do not have any senators in the US Congress, but I used to live in Virginia. That's where I grew up. So I will click Virginia. And here are my 2 former senators, Mark Warner and Tim Kaine. And I'll just click on one of their websites. These websites are all very similar. They all have the same type of information. you know, biographies about the representative or the senator, the services that they provide, news, contact information. So the important things to remember about these websites are, one, contact. So you want to know how to contact your member of Congress. And then two, services. So your member of Congress, you know, you can contact them when you have ideas about legislation, when you want to voice your concern about what's happening, you know, legislatively, but you can also contact them when you need help with federal agencies. So one of the things that our members often will contact their members of Congress for is if they have an immigration application that has been sitting with USCIS for a long time and they haven't been hearing back. So they'll sometimes call and say, you know, what can I do? And I say, let's reach out to your member. And sometimes it's not always the case, but sometimes when the member reaches out and says, hey, what's going on with this person's case? All of a sudden things start moving. So that's a way to, you know, to get some help. Sometimes another way that we've helped our TPS holders in particular, once TPS has been granted, people have access to driver's license. And driver's license are typically handled at the state level, but sometimes we'll reach out to federal representatives for them to talk to, whether they have relationships with the governor, whether they have relationships with with the state agency that handles licensing. But we'll sometimes go through our federal representatives to get to the state level if it makes sense. Sometimes it just makes sense to go straight to the state level. But you can request a flag from your member of Congress. You can request tours if you want to tour the you know, Congress, if you want to tour the White House. Those are handled here. So there's a bunch of information. You know, I think that people really should make use of all of these services that are available to you, because that's what we pay taxes for, allegedly. All right, let's go back to the training. Okay, so Congress divided into two, the Senate and the House. Next, I wanted to talk about the committees. Committees in both the House and Senate are very important because that's where all of the work gets done. When a bill is introduced, it goes to a committee. The members of those committees tend to be experts on those issues, or eventually they become experts on those issues because, you know, those are like, that's the topic that they see often and are really immersed in. So they become experts on those specific issues that are that fall under the jurisdiction of their committee. There are three types of committees in Congress. One is the Standing Committee, which is a permanent committee. An example is the House Judiciary Committee or the Senate Judiciary Committee. Those are the committees that deal with immigration. So those are committees that I deal with most frequently. Then there are select committees. Select committees are created for a specific purpose. So currently there is in the House, there's a House Select Committee on China that the Republicans have stood up. Last Congress, there was a select committee on the January 6th attack on Congress. And that was a select committee that the Democrats stood up when they had control of the House, which they no longer do. The third type of committee is a joint committee. And basically that just means it's a committee that's made up of both House members and Senate members. And again, these are the place where a lot of the work is done. You know, I'll bring up TPS for Nigeria again. Even though TPS is something that DHS will designate a country for, we often go to members of the relevant committees to get their support for it. So we, for TPS for Nigeria, will go to the immigration subcommittees in both the House and the Senate to get support. And we'll also go to the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House and the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate to get support for, because if we can get those members calling for TPS for Nigeria, other members who know that those are the experts, that puts more weight on their decision to support the designation. So that's why knowing the committees, knowing who sits on what committee can be very important to your advocacy. Okay, next I want to talk about staff, congressional staff. I'm biased as somebody who used to be congressional staff, but congressional staff make Congress work. There are thousands of staffers on the Hill, and most of our interactions will be with congressional staff. So I wanted to go over the different types of staff members that you'll meet on the Hill, just so that for your awareness. And this is a clip of me and my boss on the Hill, trying not to get us fired. So there is, staffers on the Hill. Some staff will be House staff. Some staff will be Senate staff. House staff, when you are talking with a House office, the staffers in that office tend to be, the number of staffers in that office tend to be smaller versus if you are talking to a Senate office. So in the House, there's typically about technically 2 legislative staffers that are handling all of the their bosses' portfolios. So I like to say that House, a personal office staff know a little bit about a lot of things, because they're, you could have a staffer who is handling education, immigration, healthcare, finance, all kinds of things for their member of Congress. But that's in the House, it's a very small staff. In the Senate, because the senators are representing a whole state, they tend to have more staff. You'll also have, there's a difference between state and district staff versus DC staff. So the folks in the district or back in the state tend to be the folks who are handling actual casework for people in the district. So if you, for example, have an issue with immigration and you need help from your member of Congress, the person who's going to be helping you is somebody in the district or in the state. The staff in the DC office, the DC staff, are typically the legislative staff. Those are the ones that are helping the member move legislation through Congress. And they're helping to push the members' legislative priorities. There's committee staff. Committee staff are the staff that are on the committee. These staffers tend to be highly specialized, and these are the experts. So like I said, in personal offices, the staff know a little bit about a lot. In committee staff, they know a lot about a little. So they have very specific areas that they work on, and these are like usually the like top experts on those issues. So, you know, getting to them and getting them to help you with your advocacy or any kind of legislation and policy that you're trying to push through can be very, very helpful. Personal office staff, again, those are typically the staff members when we call an office and ask for a meeting. These are the staff people that we will talk to. They work for the member of Congress themselves. Campaign staff, you know, folks trying to get these members reelected. And then caucus staff, these are people who are staff of in a caucus. So for example, the Congressional Black Caucus is a big and influential caucus in the House, well, the House and the Senate and Congress. And they have their own staff because they're so big. Congressional Progressive Caucus is another big caucus that has its own staff. Congressional Hispanic Caucus, they have their own staff separate from member staff. So that is a little bit about the, you know, what Congress is, the structure of Congress, and how it works, and, you know, all the players there. I wanted to stop us here and see if anybody had any questions that I can answer before we move to the second section.
There are questions for you in the chat box.
Oh, okay. I don't have the chat up, so let me see how I can figure that out. I think I need to stop sharing to pull up. Okay, I see. All right. If you are studying for the citizenship exam, is it also helpful to meet your representative, tour the Capitol building? It can help you remember. Oh, that's just a comment. Yes, that would actually be very, very good to actually like really be immersed in that history that they teach on the citizenship exam. Okay, next question. What issues are best suited for Congress or the Senate? And you mean what issues that they like, what kind of legislation?
No, what kind of issues should you contact Senate for? What kind of issues should you contact Senate for when you say contact your representatives?
Oh, you can contact them for anything. You can and you should. So, you know, if you, I'll start with if you're dealing with a personal issue. So if you are dealing with a personal issue that has to do with a federal agency, so, you know, the VA, if you're a veteran and you have issues with the VA, if you are, you're having any kind of issues with the IRS, if you are having issues with USCIS, any federal agency that you're having an issue with, that, you know, you are like stuck and you need someone to help you, you know, get in touch with them because they're not calling you back. If, you know, there's a problem with your application and you need somebody to help support you move things along, that's one reason or one area where you would contact your member of Congress about. Another, so that's like if you're dealing with a personal issue and you need some help in moving that, you know, moving that thing along. Sometimes you're dealing with a personal issue, you don't know if it's a federal or state issue. You can just call them and say, hey, this is a problem that I'm dealing with. Can you help me? If they can't help you, they will send you to the, state person who can help you. So regardless of, you don't need to know whether it's a, state issue, federal issue. They tend to help with federal issues, but anytime anytime you have a problem with some kind of government issue, even if it's not government, to be honest, just give them a call. And that's a way to kind of help things move. I'll give a personal example. Several years ago, when I was ready to go to college, I went to Old Dominion University. And when I got there, they wanted, even though I had been in the US since I was 8 years old, went to elementary school here, middle school, high school here in Virginia. When it was time to go to college, Old Dominion University wanted to charge me as an international student because I didn't have a green card at the time. So my mom called our senator, and she didn't even have papers. We didn't have papers, but she called the senator and told them her daughter is trying to go to school. They want to charge her all these thousands of dollars as a international student, but I went to Virginia public schools and I should be considered in-state student. Our senator reached out to the university and I was considered an in-state student. So you just never know how they're going to be able to help you. So anytime you have an issue, just reach out to them. So that's a personal issue. You can also reach out to them if something is happening in Congress and you're happy about it or you're not happy about it, or you want them to do something about it. I'll give an example in the next section of my presentation, but you can be like, for example, right now we're dealing with a possible government shutdown. You can call your member of Congress and say, hey, I see that we're having an issue with, that you guys are debating the government and funding the government. I want you to vote for the package to fund the government. I want you to vote to fund the government. Or you could say, I don't want you to fund the government, let it all burn down. Whatever your stance is on an issue, you should just feel free to call your member of Congress to voice that opinion. Like, that's what they're there for. That when you call your member of Congress, they actually keep track of that. They have a tally of, so for example, if, when I worked on the Hill, we would every week we had a meeting with the congressman, and our legislative correspondents who got all of the mail, all the phone calls, all the mail, he had a list of what everybody was calling about. So that gave my boss an idea about what are the things that my constituents care about this week. So if you want to bring an issue to a member of Congress's attention, the way that you do it is by calling their office. All you have to do is call, a staff member will pick up. You say, hi, my name is Diana. I live in your district, and I want to voice my opinion about this immigration bill. And they'll say, okay, what's your address or what's your zip code, to make sure that you're in their district. You give that to them and they say, thank you, we'll record that and give it to the congressman. And they really do. You can also send an email. We went to the website, you saw where to contact them. You put in your zip code. They just want to check that you're actually a constituent, one of their constituent, because they only care about their constituents. If you are here living in DC and you reach out to Nancy Pelosi's office, when she was leader, they care about everybody. But as a regular member, they don't care about you because they're not, you don't vote for them. You don't put them in office. So they care about the people who vote for them. So anyways, so that's another way, that's another reason why you should contact your member of Congress, to be engaged civically. You should be paying attention to what's happening. You should make your voice heard. You know, that's one of the benefits of living in this country. If we like something, we can say we like it. If we don't like something, we can say we don't like it. If Congress is not doing something that you think they should do, you can call them and say, I think you should do X, Y, Z. So that is that. And then the next question, what is the work of the Nigerian caucus and how can they support members of our community? So the caucuses are basically, I would describe them as, it's kind of like a club. It's a club of people, of Congress people who share the same interests. So, or, you know, fit a certain demographic, or, but there's something about them that there's something that brings them together. So there are hundreds of caucuses in the House of Representatives. And some of them are big, some of them are small. So the Congressional Black Caucus, that's a caucus. The members are Black members of Congress. That's basically the criteria to be a CBC member. They come together and if they're a big enough caucus, they can come together and you know, have priorities that they try to push together. They can come together and stop a vote. They can, you know, support certain issues. So the Nigerian caucus is a smaller caucus, but it's of members who care about Nigeria issues, Nigeria diaspora. So if you find a member who is on the Nigeria caucus and you have something Nigeria related that you want to speak to them about, push, these are the people who you should start with first, because as members of this caucus, they are saying, I'm interested in Nigerian issues. And so, you know, go to them. If you're trying to push TPS for Nigeria, for example, you could find, you know, who's on the committee, try to find the chairs of the committee, bring the issue to them, see how receptive they are. You can help use them as a way of strategizing. If something were to come on the floor, you can ask them to go talk to their colleagues about supporting, you know, they can be your champion in the Hill. So there are different ways you can use them to push your agenda, essentially. But the first thing I would do is get familiar with who they are and start building relationships with them. Okay, Dr. Oye, does your office work? Oh, that's not my question. Is he still here? I don't think I see him. Okay.
I'm here. I just answered the question in the chat.
Okay. Oh, you answered it in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, I just answered it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then let's see, which caucus is generally concerned about native DC residents? So I don't think there's a DC caucus. You know what? Let's check right now. I am going to, oops. How I can do this. I'm going to go to, shoot, sorry guys. Okay. And I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, so all of the caucuses in the House are administered by the Committee on House Administration. And so to find them, you go to cha.house.gov. And then, I just do CMO House Administration in Google, and it's the first link that pops up. But you can see all of the congressional member organizations. That's what caucuses are called, congressional member organizations. And the staff actually also have their own staff organization. So when I was on the Hill, one of the organizations I was a part of was the Congressional African Staff Association. It was a staff organization of African staffers and people who had an interest in US Africa policy. So here we are going to go to all of the House caucuses, to all of the caucuses for this Congress, and see if there's one specific to DC. Well, it looks like it's a Word document. Okay, so let me share the Word document. All right, so here are all the caucuses in the House currently. There's an Agriculture Research Caucus, Air Cargo Caucus, Albanian Issues Caucus, American Sikh Congressional Caucus, Arthritis Caucus. So these are made up of members of Congress who have an issue in these, who have an interest in these areas. So the Baltic Caucus. So we are going to see if there is one on DC. There might be one on statehood. So, oops, let's see if there's something on statehood. Nope. Let's see if there's something on DC. Nope. Let's try Norton, see if she's on a caucus. Cannabis caucus, no, that's not her. What caucus is she on? Task Force on Down Syndrome, Quiet Skies. So there is no caucus on specific to DC. So in that instance, what you could do is reach out to your congresswoman. So you can reach out to, or delegate, I should say, Delegate Holmes Norton, and ask that she start a caucus. It's really that simple. And you get a bunch of people from the district to push for the caucus to start. You would, make your case for why you think the caucus is necessary, what you think the caucus should, meet to talk about, what kind of members should be on the caucus, and, try to convince her to start the caucus. And then, you may or may not be successful, but that's basically how simple it can be. Okay. Let's see. Another question. And I'm actually going to make this our last question because I think we might be going over time. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having my question. Would be who to reach to represent for diversity, equity, inclusion in a corporate environment. An email was sent mistakenly by a hiring manager and it said no Nigerians for parole. Practical roles, only Indian. I said, who can I reach out to get this addressed? I would, in this instance, you could reach out to your member of Congress, but in this instance, I think I would reach out to the Department of Labor. So I would reach out to the Department of Labor, or let's say you don't know who to reach out to. You could reach out to your member of Congress and say, this is what happened. This is an email that we received mistakenly. I think that there's discrimination happening here. What can I do? When you talk to your congressional office, they will tell you, this sounds like an issue for you to take to the Department of Labor. They could help you start your case at the Department of Labor. You can ask them, can you help me start the case? And then they would do that for you. But Department of Labor is who, and EOC is likely who should handle that issue. All right. Okay, so we will now move on to the second part of the presentation. And let me share my screen again. All right. So the second part of the presentation, I want to focus on the legislative process itself. So the first part was on Congress, what it is, how it's structured, who works in Congress. The second part is the legislative process. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, all of the laws in this country must go through. So there are rules and regulations that come from elsewhere, but the laws themselves have to come from Congress. So for those of us who want to, be involved in the process of improving this country, making sure that it runs the way that we think it should run, it's important for us to know how the legislative process works. And it's also important to know that the legislative process is not restricted to certain people. In a democracy, all of us have access to all of us are essentially running this country. We have access to our legislators. We can voice our opinions. We can suggest laws, we can oppose laws, we can vote people in, we can vote people out. We have very, very, we should be very engaged in the way that the country runs, because if there are people who are engaged, and they might not represent the vision that we have for ourselves, for the country. And so it's important for us to also be engaged in the process because we want our own preferences to be taken into account. We're not always going to win, but at least people need to know what it is that we want and why it is that we want and why we think we should win. So it's not limited to any kind of specific person. Anybody can do this, and everybody should. So here I have the general process of how a bill becomes a law. So first the bill gets introduced, then the bill goes to committee, then it gets a floor vote, then it goes to the other chamber, and then the president signs it into law. So it's a very it's a simple process, not really, but this is like the high level overview of how a bill becomes a law. The first, and we're gonna go through each step a little bit. So the first step is a bill being introduced. Who can introduce a bill? Anybody. Well, no. Who can introduce a bill? Only a member of Congress can introduce a bill. But where can they get an idea for a bill? It can come from anywhere. They can be watching TV one day and say, I see this problem. We need to do something about it. So I'm going to introduce a bill. Their constituents can say, I have this problem and, I think it needs to be addressed. And so the member can say, okay, I think you're right. We're going to introduce a bill. It can be a lobbyist who says, my client thinks XYZ and wants to introduce a bill, and the bill will be introduced. Or a member of Congress himself, like I said, a committee. So the idea can come from anywhere, but the member of Congress himself or herself has to introduce the bill. So here I have an example of a bill, the HR 7295, the Medical Records Access Fairness Act. And this is how this bill came about. So when I was a staffer on the Hill, a woman called our office and, she was complaining about an experience that she had at her doctor's office. So she had a chronic condition, and she had been dealing with this chronic condition for years. And at some point, she needed to change doctors. So she calls her old doctor and says, I need to change doctors. So I need a copy of my medical file so I can take it to my new doctor. And so her old doctor was like, sure, that's no problem. That's going to cost you $5,000. I don't remember the exact cost, but it was something, astronomical, and it was in the thousands. And essentially what their reasoning was, they needed to print each page of her file, of her medical file. And because she's been dealing with this chronic issue for, years, her file was very large. So the printing cost of, printing everything to give to her would be, astronomical. And so she has to pay for it. So she called our office and she complained, and she asked my boss to do something about it. So, he heard her. He thought it was outrageous that they would be trying to charge her this amount of money just for her to take her file from one doctor to the other. So what he did was he introduced the Medical Records Access Fairness Act. And the bill would essentially prohibit a healthcare provider from charging a fee, any fee, for providing copies of somebody's protected health information. So that's an example of a constituent having a problem and calling their member of Congress and saying, I'm dealing with this, you need to do something about it. And the member of Congress saying, okay, you think, I'm right. I mean, you're right. I think I will do something about it. And that's how a lot of bills get introduced. Just somebody has an idea about something that needs to be done. So that's one way. Another way is interest groups can work with members of Congress to formulate legislation. An example of one that my organization worked on a couple of years ago was the American Dream and Promise Act. We have a large TPS population in our membership. So what the American Dream and Promise Act would do was legalize, provide green cards to DACA holders and TPS holders. So we were supportive of this because of it would legalize TPS holders, and we were very involved with the negotiation of that bill before it was introduced, trying to make sure that as they wrote the language of that bill, that African TPS holders were not left out of that bill. A lot of the times when people are, discussing these bills, putting them together, negotiating, nobody's ever thinking about African immigrants or how these bills impact African immigrants. So it's very important for African immigrants to be at the table to say, don't forget about us, or no, we don't agree to this because it's going to impact our community this way, or yes, we need this piece, we need this specific language in here because this is, it's going to be a positive for our community. So that was one of the ways that, you know, we were able to work on a piece of legislation. It was eventually introduced. It eventually passed the House. It got stuck in the Senate, but that was also a way that we as a community advocate, you know, could be involved in the legislative process. Another way for a bill to be introduced is if a lobbyist comes with a bill already written. And, you know, the lobbyist can say, this is the bill that I want you to introduce. And the member can take a look at it and say, yes, I like it, we'll introduce it, or no, I don't like it, we're not going to introduce it. So somebody can come with a bill already written. That's a way of introducing a bill. And then a committee can, you know, come up with a bill and then give it to a member of Congress. So again, anybody can have the idea, can put the bill together, but it has to be a member of Congress themselves that actually introduces the bill. Once the bill is introduced, then it goes to a committee. As I mentioned before, a committee is very important because that's where all of the work happens. So once the bill goes to a committee, then the members who are in the committee will start working on the bill. The medical records bill that I just mentioned, that bill was sent to the Energy and Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over all legislation having to do with healthcare. So that's where any healthcare legislation would go to that committee. The American Dream and Promise Act, that has to do with immigration. So that goes to the Judiciary Committee. And the folks in Judiciary Committee would work on that bill. This committee stage is usually where most bills die. They are introduced, they're sent to committee, and then that's it. Nothing ever happens after that. And, you know, part of it is just, there are just so many committees, you know, sometimes bills are introduced not to move anywhere. A lot of times bills are introduced to, where they're called what we call messaging bills. So they provide an opportunity for a member of Congress, for advocates to message on a certain issue. So you might know that your bill isn't going to go anywhere this Congress, but it gives you an opportunity to say, member XYZ introduced legislation to do XYZ. And, you know, you can use that to talk to the media, you can, you know, write op-eds, you can do, put it on social media and create like energy around whatever the issue is. So, but this is also an opportunity if you do have something introduced and you want members, you know, you don't want it to die. This is an opportunity for advocates to really start advocating and educating members on the Hill, getting the support that they want for the bill so that hopefully it can move. Sometimes what leadership will say, leadership is, you know, the speaker, majority leader, they'll say, okay, if you have this bill, if you want it to come to the floor for a vote, then get 100 members of Congress to sign on to this bill. If you get 100 members of Congress to sign on to this bill, then we'll bring it to the floor for a vote. And so now you have to start meeting with all these members of Congress to educate them on the issue and to you know, get them to support your bill. Depending on the bill, that could be easy, but it can be very hard to get support on the bill. So, you know, that's what happens when it's at the committee level. Something else that happens if a bill is going to move, and who decides if a bill is going to move? It's typically leadership, and the leadership of the House, leadership of the Senate, and leadership in the committee. So the chair of the committee will decide what's moving in that committee. So, you know, having relationships with chairs of the committees that you care about can be very important to getting your priorities moved. But, you know, if they decide they want to take up an issue, they'll have hearings where they will bring experts to come and talk about the issue. They can have hearings about a certain piece of legislation itself. So here I have 2 pictures of hearings that we were involved in. The bottom picture is one of our members. She was a Liberian DED holder who, under the Trump administration, Trump terminated DED for Liberians. And so we were pushing for the American Dream and Promise Act, which would have given TPS and DED holders green cards. So she was speaking and testifying in front of the House in favor of the American Dream and Promise Act, in favor of giving TPS and DED holders green cards. So that was one hearing we were involved in. The top picture is a hearing on the refugee resettlement program. So again, under the Trump administration, that program was decimated, and groups have been trying very hard to get it back on track. And so Dauda Sise, who is the network director here at ACT, testified on that committee about, he himself is a former refugee from Sierra Leone, and he was testifying on his experience as a refugee and why the US should support refugee resettlement and you know, support refugees coming to the US. So hearings is what happens at the committee level. Markups happen at the committee level. So what a markup is when a piece of legislation is introduced and they're basically editing it. They're, you know, one side might want to weaken it, one side might want to strengthen it, but essentially they're making amendments to it. They're making edits to it. And once the, you know, once all of the work on that bill, on that issue is done in the committee, they'll take a vote on a piece of legislation. And if the vote passes, if everybody in the committee decides to move the bill along, then it passes and it goes to the floor. The term when a bill passes out of committee is the bill is voted out of committee. So that's an amazing step because, as I mentioned, most bills die in committee. So to have it come out of committee is an amazing step, but then it has to wait to be put on the floor. And some bills never make it to the floor. But if your bill does make it to the floor, it'll go through what's called Rules Committee. The Rules Committee, in the House, there's a Rules Committee. The Senate, there's no Rules Committee. But in the House, it'll go through Rules Committee. They will determine, you know, the rules surrounding the bill when it comes up to the floor. And it'll come up to the floor. Usually, Usually when a bill comes to the floor, it's going to pass. Usually, leadership will never bring a bill to the floor unless it's going to pass. This has been typical. This is just how Congress works. It's like an unwritten rule. You don't bring a bill to the floor unless it's going to pass. This Congress, though, we've seen a lot of things come to the floor and fail in the House. It's happened like 3 times this week alone. And the reason is because the Republicans in the House have a very, very slim majority. So they cannot afford to lose more than 4 votes. They need all Republicans in line to get something to pass the floor. But there is a caucus, the Freedom Caucus, that has enough power, enough votes that they can come together and say, if you don't do what we want, we're not going to help you pass this bill. So essentially that's what they've been doing. And here we are. We can't fund the government. So I don't know if it's going to be true now that things that come to the floor will always pass, but that used to be the case. It's not the case under Kevin McCarthy. So we shall see. But generally speaking, if something makes it to the floor, it's because you know it's going to pass. Once a bill goes to the floor and it's passed, then it gets sent to the next chamber. So if a bill started in the House, passed in the House, then it goes to the Senate and the Senate takes it up. If the bill started in the Senate, passed the Senate, then the House takes it up. So in most of my examples, the bill starts in the House, so then it goes to the Senate. And so that's what's happening now with the bill to fund the government. The issue is the Republicans in the House getting together to figure out, you know, what they want to how they're going to fund the government. So, you know, we are waiting for something to come out of for a vote, and it might be happening now, but as we're meeting, but there, everyone is waiting for something to pass the House funding the government. And then it would go to the Senate. The Senate would take it up, pass it, hopefully. And then we would, you know, it would go to the president and we would sign it. But TBD on if that happens. But if you turn on CNN or whatever show you watch, this is what's happening right now. We're waiting to see something pass the House and then be sent to the Senate. Once a bill goes to the other chamber, in this case, the Senate will, you know, also consider it. Usually things are happening at the same time. So, you know, by the time it gets to the Senate, it doesn't have to go through, the process doesn't necessarily start there with like committees and all of that. The committees have already been working on it. They've been doing everything that they need to do so that when it comes from the House, oftentimes they're like kind of ready to vote on it, or it's not going to take too long for them to vote on it. Once they vote on it, well, I should say, the bill that comes from the House and the bill that comes from the Senate have to be identical in order to go to the president. If they are not identical, they cannot go to the president. So using the example of the funding bill for the government, what I heard before I hopped on here was that Speaker Kevin McCarthy in the House has decided to move a bill that will not include funding for Ukraine. The Senate has a bill that does include funding for Ukraine. So even if the House passes their funding bill that does not include funding for Ukraine, when it gets to the Senate is going to have to make a choice about whether or not they want to, whether or not they need that funding for Ukraine, because the bills have to match in order for them to, go to the president, essentially. So that could be another hiccup that we see. But if the bills do match, then they go to the president. The president will sign it into law, and we have a new law. A lot of times, though, that's not the end of the story, especially for us advocates, because we've been working hard to get a bill passed into law. And I should say, I heard a statistic that from the time a bill is introduced to the time that it passes into law, if it ever does, is 7 years. So as advocates, we've been working for years to get something passed into law. We can't just leave it to the executive branch to interpret it however it wants and make all kinds of regulation that they think, you know, should be. Advocates still have to be engaged. An example here is we were successful in getting a green card program for the Liberian community in 2019 passed into law. It's the first green legalization since the 80s in this country. And it allowed thousands of Liberians to get green cards. When it passed into law, we were all very excited. But then, this was under the Trump administration, we noticed that the administration and the agencies were making it very hard for people to actually apply for the program. Even though the program was there, it was very difficult for people to actually apply for the program. So our advocacy had to start because we wanted the agency to, for example, accept certain documents to show Liberian nationality. There were a lot of things that we wanted to make the process easier for Liberians to apply for it. And that required a lot of advocacy. So now our advocacy shifted from talking to Congress to now talking to USCIS, to the White House, to get the program to look like what we wanted it to look like. Because the law is just general. It says there's this program now, but now we need USCIS to accept if somebody doesn't have a birth certificate, what can they show? How do they show that they're Liberian? So all of that. So I say all of that to say the advocacy doesn't stop when the bill is passed. The advocacy continues. After the green card program was for a year. So when that year was coming up, we felt like it was hard for Liberians to apply. We needed them to have more time. So then our advocacy went back to Congress and we asked Congress for an additional year for the program. And we were able to extend the program for an additional year. So sometimes it's like not just Congress, it's the agencies, but it's all advocacy. And it's all in service of the communities that we serve. So that is that's the legislative process. And with the little bit of time we have left, I thought that I would show people how to locate a bill, track a bill. This might be, I don't know if anybody's currently has any bills that they're interested in. But if you ever do, this will be a way to find the bill. So for this part of the exercise, you will go to www.congress.gov. And oops. Can I click on this? Okay. So congress.gov. This is what the page looks like. This is a very useful site. It has everything you could ever want to know about anything related to our laws in this country. But I will look up HR 16. This is the American Dream and Promise Act that I mentioned a little earlier. When I put in HR 16, it'll ask me, do I want to search all sources or just legislation? I'm going to click just legislation. This is the bill. So I'm going to click it. There are tabs in the middle of the page. The first tab is a summary. So this tells you what the bill would do. And essentially it gives green cards to DACA holders, to TPS holders, and to DED holders. You can see the text of the legislation. It's broken up into one section, the DREAM Act, that deals with DACA holders. The second section, the American Promise Act, this deals with TPS and DED holders. You can come here where it says co-sponsors to see who all has co-sponsored this piece of legislation. Co-sponsoring means that you support it and you've signed your name onto it. So I will see if my representative is here. Alphabetical by name. Let's see, Norton. Yep, she has signed on. So if I see that my representative has signed on, I can contact her and say thank you for you know, supporting immigrants, supporting TPS holders, DACA holders by supporting the American Dream and Promise Act. If my member is not here, let's see if my former representative from Virginia is on here. Where's Virginia? Oh, I don't think anybody from Virginia is on here. Wow. That's not good. So it looks like my former representative from Virginia has not signed on to the bill. If I was still in her district, I would call her and say, or write her and say, you know, I noticed you're not signed on to this piece of legislation. You know, could you please co-sponsor? But I'm no longer in her district. So now if I reach out to her and say, I noticed, you know, I'm a former constituent of yours, and I see that you're not on my, you know, you haven't signed on to this piece of legislation, can you please sign on? She's not gonna do it because, I mean, maybe she will, but more than likely, she's not gonna do it because I'm not her constituent. So she's like, I didn't put her in office to work for her or to work for me. So she's not working for me. So, you know, it would be useless to reach out to. I mean, it's not always useless, but generally it would be useless to reach out to her. You always want to, when you have an issue, a concern, you always want to reach out to your own member of Congress. And with that, and I have, well, anyways, I have you know, now that we know who our members of Congress are, you could check to see if your member's on that list. And if they are, you can send them a message. If they're not, you can send them a message. And if they are, you can send them a message, but we won't do that today since we're running short on time. But with that, that is all that I have. And we'll open it up for questions, either if folks have questions from the first section or the second section. And let me close this so that I can read the chat.
The most recent is, what is the difference between a bill and a resolution?
Sure. So a bill is actual legislation that can be enacted into law. A resolution doesn't get enacted into law. It's basically like a sense of Congress to say, you know, that we as Congress are saying that this is an issue, you know, and it doesn't have the power that legislation has. But if you are, you know, for advocacy purposes, you can get a resolution done, and that can be used for messaging whatever your advocacy is. So, but a resolution does not turn into law.
So I also want to piggyback on the question about discrimination specifically for Nigeria. If the Nigerian Center or our community as a whole wants to elevate that issue, that we are noticing a trend of this workplace discrimination for Nigerians or for certain communities, how would we go about that? And what is the best point of contact? You mentioned it, but more specifically, like, how would we put that motion in progress?
So you're saying if Nigeria Center wants to take up this issue, how to go about it?
Yes.
I think, one way to do it is to start with your member of Congress, ask for a meeting and say, and basically have a conversation. This is a trend that we're seeing. And, it's something that we think that needs to be addressed. So I think first you want to, in addition to just starting to have the conversations, I think you also want to start doing research on the issue. You want to start, doing education in the public about the issue. Something that I have been seeing that, is somewhat similar is I've been seeing a lot more articles in general about caste discrimination within the Indian American community and how it's prevalent in like tech companies and whatnot. And that was something that was totally new to me. I didn't know this thing was happening. But because I've been now reading it in different articles, I'm like, oh, and so now I am, just as a regular member of the public, I'm aware of this happening. So, I say that to say this is something similar that the Nigerian Center can start putting out into the public, so that the public is now aware that there is this discrimination happening, against Nigerians, and so that people start to think, oh, I didn't know this was happening. We really need to do something about this. And then you start having conversations with your members of Congress. You ask members of, your community to also have conversations with their members of Congress. People go to talk about it. People write op-eds about it. People do research. You partner with think tanks to do research on it, and just really, make it more known that this thing is happening and that something needs to happen about it. So that's what I would say.
Excellent.
Might be the first steps.
Excellent. Am I a constituent even if I didn't vote for the rep?
Yeah. If you live in their district, you are their constituent. Whether you voted for them or didn't, whether you have immigration status or don't, if you live in the zip code that they represent, you are their constituent.
We have Tony. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you again, Abinga. I'll thank you profusely for this. I met you a few weeks ago, and I thank you for what's going on here. And I'm doing my best to disseminate this information. And of course, I will still link up, like I told you, see where I can volunteer. Thank you, Diane, for the very wonderful presentation. And I'm happy for what Boinga just, brought up. But, these things can be very subtle. You can't have evidence that there's this kind of discrimination. I've had instances where somebody told me, but in reading in between the line, the feedback I got, like a job interview where I know, but I don't know about every other candidate, but I was told this, that we prefer the other candidate. Now, the person was telling me this in confidence. It's not something I want to take that person on for not, so that going forward doesn't give me that kind of feedback. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they said, it's because this person has been in the system longer than you are, and I was like, come on. I don't know what the experience is, but I was rightly told that was the feedback, not once, not twice. How do we collect those kind of information. I don't know, we don't like getting into trouble, you understand what I mean, but maybe in a very more strategic way, you can collect those kind of evidence, pass it on to you or, the community here, and make sure those kind of things doesn't happen, because now I'm happy about this country. It's a kind of discrimination. I'm an immigrant, yeah, green card holder, not yet a citizen, then this is happening. It's surely a case of being discriminated. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is America. This country has been dealing with discrimination since its inception. And a lot of what you described is what people still face in this country, Black people face in this country. Even if you weren't Nigerian, just having Black skin can, result in some discrimination sometimes. So I think, as you collecting data might be difficult because right now, employers aren't required to give information on people's nationalities, not that I know of. So, I think it would be difficult to do that. But, if you start to socialize the issue more broadly, maybe you can get folks at a think tank that want to investigate this further and who might be able to work with you on methods for determining what, how discrimination is happening. And, because, people discriminate on people. It just happens in this country. Like it's always happening. And there are ways that that discrimination is measured. So I think just, I'm not an expert on it, but, trying to work with organizations that do have that capacity, that, have that expertise, I think would be a good way to go. Also, having your own personal experience, your own personal story, you can share that. You can either write, your own story in an op-ed. You can pitch it to a reporter who can do a broader story on it, include, your quotes. And because I think as more and more people hear about it, there will be an interest in addressing it. But if it's just one person who says, oh, I was, discriminated against, people might be like, okay. But if you can get a lot of people to see that this is actually a trend and there's discrimination against Nigerians in this country, then you get more people to come along with you as you work to address the issue.
Excellent. I want to kind of, at the interest of time, just want to thank everyone, and I just want everyone to give a virtual applause. Please use the emojis and chat. Just thank Ms. Diana for the insightful presentation and just resounding again how it's important to be civically engaged and giving us the tools to be able to do so. Thank you so much. And thank you also for your participation, and Damilola for elevating that issue that we are definitely going to be taking on. I quickly want to highlight a few upcoming events that we have coming up. August 25th, we'll be doing a Know Your Right workshops like this, but it's more on immigration, preparing evidence for your asylum. There is an in-person event at the Nigerian Center on October 10th, which is a storytelling night to celebrate Nigerian independence. To get involved in what we do, this video will be on our website on the demand. You can also look at videos of other workshops that we've had, volunteer opportunities, donate, community partners. Join us on social media if you have not, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Speaking opportunities, we always take application for speakers. Donations, if you are not, please make a commitment to start donating today. As I said, recurring donation is the best way to support the center. Even if it's $1, it makes a ton of difference if we can plan on that. We are all volunteer-led team, and it takes a community. Your contribution will go a long way. That said, I want to release everyone into greatness and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you all.